Some people, like myself, choose not to even try taking a medication. And the good thing about the antithyroid medication is that it almost always works. The downside is that side effects are common. So not everybody does well when taking the medication. Some people, like myself, choose not to even try taking a medication. This episode is to discuss my SAVED Thyroid Method, which is the framework I recommend to my patients with hyperthyroidism. So SAVED is an acronym that stands for Safe Symptom Management, Align Adrenals and Blood Sugar, Vanquish Infections and Heal the Gut, Eliminate Reactive Foods and Toxins, and Detect and Remove Hidden Triggers. And the goal, of course, is to help balance the thyroid, calm the immune system, heal the gut. The number one goal isn't to manage the symptoms, but again, it's to address the underlying cause of the problem, to essentially restore the person's health so that they could avoid radioactive iodine thyroid surgery, feel great again. But it's important to be safe while addressing the underlying cause of hyperthyroidism. And so, hey everyone. So what I plan on doing in this episode is to discuss my SAVED Thyroid Method, which is the framework I recommend to my patients with hyperthyroidism. So SAVED is an acronym that stands for Safe Symptom Management, Align Adrenals and Blood Sugar, Vanquish Infections and Heal the Gut, Eliminate Reactive Foods and Toxins, and Detect and Remove Hidden Triggers. And the goal, of course, is to help balance the thyroid, calm the immune system, heal the gut, really just do everything that's necessary to restore the person's health. And let's go ahead and start with safe symptom management. Now, when someone works with me, the number one goal isn't to manage the symptoms, but again, it's to address the underlying cause of the problem, to essentially restore the person's health so that they could avoid radioactive iodine thyroid surgery, feel great again. But it's important to be safe while addressing the underlying cause of hyperthyroidism. And so there are different ways that you could safely manage the symptoms. When you go to an endocrinologist, typically they're going to recommend medication such as antithyroid medication, examples methimazole, propylthiouracil or PTU. There's carbimazole for some people who are outside of the United States. Sometimes they'll get beta blockers such as propranolol, which not only lowers the resting heart rate, but can inhibit or at least decrease the conversion of T4 to T3. And some will recommend both. Some will recommend methimazole and propranolol. And there's other beta blockers, metoprolol, atenolol. But either way, those are the ways that or the medications that conventional endocrinologists will recommend. And of course, sometimes they recommend radioactive iodine or thyroid surgery, but we're really talking about symptom management. I mean, not that that's not managing the symptoms if someone gets their thyroid removed, but yeah, let's talk about some of the natural strategies to support symptoms. So many of you know that when I dealt with Graves' disease, I was able to avoid the antithyroid medication. And again, definitely a time and place for antithyroid medication. When I work with people, some people do take the antithyroid medication, and the good thing about the antithyroid medication is that it almost always works. The downside is that side effects are common. So not everybody does well when taking the medication. Some people, like myself, choose not to even try taking the medication, although I would have been open to taking it if the natural methods didn't work, but thankfully they did. So I took bugleweed, which is an herb with antithyroid properties, and that did a wonderful job of managing my symptoms. I personally took MediHerb bugleweed, which is based out of Australia. And then I took MediHerb Motherwort, also based out of Australia. That's where MediHerb is based out of. And yeah, and they both did a great job of managing my symptoms. I started with the bugleweed, and the bugleweed alone helped, but I was still having heart palpitations. So I decided to add the Motherwort. But there are others as well, lemon balm. So I wasn't as familiar with lemon balm when I dealt with Graves and didn't take lemon balm as a result. So I did fine with without lemon balm. But lemon balm has some mild antithyroid properties, has a calming effect if someone's experiencing anxiety, sleep issues. Again, just lowering the thyroid hormone, just taking bugleweed, for example, may help. But some cases they might benefit from adding lemon balm as well, or even drinking lemon balm tea. Just keep in mind that the tea isn't as potent as the extract. So some people, even with bugleweed, will say, I'll try to make it in T form. And usually it's not doing a good job of managing their symptoms. And then there's L-carnitine. So L-carnitine is also something that I wasn't familiar with when I dealt with Graves' disease. So I didn't take L-carnitine. Now, again, not everybody needs to take L-carnitine. So even if I was familiar with L-carnitine at the time, it doesn't mean I definitely would have taken L-carnitine. So usually bugleweed is what I start with, and sometimes motherwort. So most commonly bugleweed and motherwort. Again, sometimes just bugleweed itself. But L-carnitine, the research shows that taking between 2 and 4,000 milligrams of L-carnitine can block the entry of thyroid hormone into the cell. And it's typically you want to take L-carnitine tartrate, although you could do a combination of L-carnitine tartrate with some acetyl L-carnitine. Now, a recent study, and I had a podcast episode on this as well, going over a study from August 2025, which discussed combining selenium with L-carnitine, and not higher doses, only 500 milligrams of carnitine, and I believe it was 83 micrograms of selenium, helping people who are already taking anti-thyroid medication. In the study was methimazole, and just specific for those with Graves, and those who took the selenium and the L-carnitine, they were able to take a lesser dose of the medication and also had a good impact on the thyroid antibodies as well. So yeah, so those are some of the more common eight natural agents for symptom management. There's also lithium orotate, lithium carbonate is a prescription medication, typically used as an antidepressant, not as commonly used for that purpose today, but they realized that that caused hypothyroidism in a lot of people. Lithium orotate is over the counter, not as potent as lithium carbonate, but lithium orotate also can also help with symptom management. And there are also other options too, which I've spoken about on this podcast. So low dose naltrexone or LDN modulates the immune system and is kind of hit or miss. So, but that is an option if someone can't tolerate the medication and the natural agents just aren't effective. And cholestyramine is a binding agent used by a lot of functional medicine practitioners for mycotoxins, for mold mycotoxins, but also combines with thyroid hormone. So those are some other options. So that's the S part of the SAVED thyroid method. And let's move on to A, which is align adrenals and blood sugar. So when I dealt with Graves' disease, my adrenals were not in good shape, and I didn't realize how bad they were just because I figured I was doing a good job in managing the stress. But thankfully, I ended up doing an adrenal saliva test because otherwise, I wouldn't have realized how bad my adrenals were. My cortisol was low, my DHEA was low, my secretory IgA was low. And so it did take some work to restore the health of my adrenals. Stress management played a big role. Getting sufficient sleep was a big role, played a big role. Taking some supplements to support the adrenals and low cortisol was something I did. And I mean, I think a big factor was not just the emotional stress, but overtraining. So over exercise was a big factor. So when aligning adrenals, you definitely need to address the cause of the adrenal dysfunction in the first place. Stress is common, and it could be stress like stored trauma. It doesn't have to be recent stressors, it could be stressors from many years ago. Again, could be physical stressors, but you do want to address the cause of the problem, block out time for stress management on a daily basis, not just every other day. And you want to get in the routine of stress handling. And so, yeah, so stress, I mean, stress causes a lot of problems. It causes stress is important for the conversion of T4 to T3, but also stress. I mentioned when I did my adrenal saliva test, not only was cortisol and DHA was low, but something called secretory IgA was low, which lines the mucosal surfaces of the body, including the gastrointestinal tract. So that's one way that chronic stress can affect the gut and just overall causes dysregulation of the immune system, especially like when someone has higher cortisol, that increases pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are associated with Graves' disease. Yeah. So anyway, stress is a big factor. Whenever I work with someone one-on-one, I have them fill out a health history, and most of the time they're putting down stress as a factor. And when they don't put down stress, I'm questioning: are they like I was years ago, where they think stress wasn't a factor, where they think they were handling the stress? I mean, even if someone's retired, and they don't think stress is a factor, many times it could be. So not all the time, but just something to consider. And I wouldn't rule out stress as being a factor so quickly. And then blood sugar imbalances, very common as well. And so just, I mean, some people have hypoglycemia, but I would say that insulin resistance is more common, where your body isn't as sensitive to insulin. And I mean, diet definitely plays a role, and stress and sleep. So diet and lifestyle could play a big role, but usually there's an inflammatory component when it comes to insulin resistance. So you might not be able to reverse it alone with just diet and lifestyle, but definitely you want to start with diet and lifestyle. And as far as how do you know if you have insulin resistance, I mean, hemoglobin A1C is what's usually used, or should I say, actually, fasting glucose is what's most commonly used. And if someone has a fasting glucose greater than 100, here in the United States at least, units of measurement, then they might get a hemoglobin A1C. And then if it's, I think, 5.7 or greater, someone's 5.7, let's say they're pre diabetic. But even if someone's 5.5, 5.6, kind of on the higher side, but it's not a perfect marker, hemoglobin A1C. I would say to do hemoglobin A1C and also do fasting insulin. And if fasting insulin is too high, if it's greater than 5, that could be a concern, definitely greater than 7. So yeah, just those are some factors to consider, some markers at least to look at. So trying to determine if someone has insulin resistance. And like I said, diet does play a role. I mean, this day and age, a lot of people are doing intermittent fasting, which can help in some cases of insulin resistance. You of course want to make sure though, if you're doing any type of fasting, you're getting enough nutrients, you're getting enough protein. You want to be careful about extreme fasting because that could be a stressor on your body. So if someone's doing like 18, 20 hours of fasting and only has like a 4 to 6 hour eating window, that's not great. Even some people aren't ready for like a 16/8 fast. So again, just be careful when it comes to eating. And I, of course, mentioned overtraining and exercising. Also, you want to be careful about when talk about adrenal health. So let's move on to the V, vanquish infections and heal the gut. And I can't say this isn't necessarily in the order I go, the SAVED Thyroid Method. I mean, safe symptom management, I would say, is definitely up there, number one. You probably want to do that first and then address the cause of the problem. Align adrenals and blood sugar, I would say, is up there. Vanquish infections. I don't know if you'd say that. I mean, healing the gut, vanquish infections and healing the gut. I mean, yeah, definitely important. So, but I guess the point is not everybody has infections. It's not, you definitely want to heal the gut. A healthy gut is important, but there could be other factors, including the next one that I'll talk about, next part of the Safe Thyroid Method. But yeah, infections, when it comes to different types of infections, viruses, parasites, bacteria like H. pylori, and then there's overgrowths like Candida overgrowth. There's SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. So yeah, infections could be a factor with autoimmune conditions, including Graves' disease, EBV. Many are familiar with Epstein-Barr virus, which has been shown to be a trigger of Graves and Hashimoto's in the literature during the pandemic 2020. Definitely had a lot of people who got COVID who developed Graves' disease. Also, you could develop subacute thyroiditis, which is a different type of hyperthyroid condition. So then that's typically caused by a virus. But and then bacteria H. pylori could be a trigger. Parasites definitely could be a factor. And then I wouldn't say SIBO and Candida overgrowth are triggers, but they could affect permeability of the gut, which for someone with Graves' disease, that could be a factor. There's that triad of autoimmunity, genetic predisposition, exposure to one or more environmental triggers, and that leaky gut consists of that triad. So yeah, it could definitely set the stage for autoimmunity. And yeah, I mean, just even if you don't have a gut infection or infections, I mean, vanquish infections isn't just about gut, even though it's tied into healing the gut. But when it comes to thyroid health, thyroid autoimmunity, there's other types of infections as well, which is so when I spoke about viruses, I'm not really talking about viruses in the gut, even though some viruses can affect the gut. But yeah, healing, obviously, again, if there are gut infections, you want to address the gut infection and healing the gut. It's what's called the 5R protocol when it comes to gut healing. And so the first R is removing things such as, again, gut infections, but then we'll talk next about foods and toxins, toxicants. So you want to remove the factor that's causing the gut dysbiosis, which is the imbalance in the gut flora, also the leaky gut. Replace is the next R. Replace things like digestive enzymes if necessary, stomach acid if necessary, bile salts if necessary. And then the next R, reinoculate with prebiotics and probiotics. There's a place for both food and supplements. The next R, repair, things like drinking bone broth, or if you're a vegan vegetarian, maybe you drink cabbage juice. And then there's supplements such as L-glutamine and aloe vera and zinc carnosine and DGL licorice. And then the last R stands for rebalance, rebalance the parasympathetic nervous system through mind body medicine, vagus nerve exercises, maybe nervous system retraining. So yeah, and you might, I kind of skipped over evaluating gut health, but certainly there's a time and place for comprehensive stool test, SIBO breath test, for example. And then obviously some people do need to see someone like a gastroenterologist. Some people do need like an endoscopy. Not a huge a fan of endoscopies and colonoscopies, but there's a time place for them. Okay, so the next component of the SAVED Thyroid Method, the E, eliminate reactive foods and toxins. So foods, of course, I wrote a book called The Hyperthyroid Healing Diet. And if you haven't read that, I highly would recommend doing so. There's 3 different types of diet I talk about. The one I recommend typically for Graves is a level 3 diet, which is a modified AIP diet, and just avoiding allergens such as gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and then other foods that could affect healing of the gut, such as the nightshades and grains. I mean, even the gluten-free grains. It's not easy following a AIP diet, level 3 diet. There's also a level 2 diet, which is similar to a modified paleo diet, what makes it a little bit easier. Still not easy, but easier. But again, you definitely want to eliminate inflammatory foods. If you're eating, I mean, it goes without saying, you definitely want to avoid the fast food, the refined foods and sugars, but even some foods like nightshades, tomatoes, eggplant, what peppers, all have some good health benefits. It's just that in some people they could be inflammatory and prevent gut healing. So as part of an elimination diet, you want to at least take a break from them initially. And yeah, so definitely for more information, check out the book, The Hyperthyroid Healing Diet, which you could again find on Amazon. And then toxins and toxicants. So toxins are like just natural in our environment, like mycotoxins from mold. That's a toxin. Whereas xenoestrogens, like microplastics, bisphenol A, BPA, those are toxicants. So man-made. So, but yeah, there's a lot of different toxins and toxicants. There's mycotoxins. There's again the xenoestrogens. There's glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in the herbicide Roundup. There's pesticides. There's heavy metals. There's flame retardants. So what I would say is start in your own home. There's only so much you could do outside of the home, but you could do a lot in your home. Again, eating organic food will minimize exposure to pesticides. But then your cleaners and cosmetics, try to switch to as many natural cleaners, cosmetics. If you find it overwhelming, at least start with 1 or 2 cleaners and cosmetics that you use most frequently, and you switch it to more natural options. The water that you drink, I mean, definitely, I would not recommend drinking water out of plastic bottles on a day in, day out basis. So, yeah, just maybe stainless steel or glass are good options. And yeah, even like showering, maybe get a whole house filter or a shower filter. So you're bathing in cleaner water. Might not be perfect, but better than the tap water. Maybe get an air purifier. Again, there's a lot of things you could do. You could do sauna to sweat out the toxins. You just want to be careful of dealing with if you have overt hyperthyroidism. So if you're not managing your hyperthyroidism and you have an elevated resting heart rate, sauna could further elevate the heart rate. So you do want to be careful if you do have hyperthyroidism. You might not want to go into sauna. Maybe first consult with a practitioner and get their advice first. But yeah, you could support detoxification through food, through sweating. There is a time and place for supplementation like N-acetylcysteine, milk thistle, for example. I have a supplement, Hepatoimmune Supreme, that has NAC, milk thistle, schisandra, also offers some immune system support. Yeah, so the fifth component of the Safe Thyroid methods, the D, stands for detect and remove hidden triggers. So what are hidden triggers? There's a good number of hidden triggers. Just For example, we can argue that many of the toxins and toxicants are hidden, just like someone might have mold in their home, the mycotoxins in there. Again, they don't know. Maybe there's no obvious water damage and they still have mold as a problem. Or again, they have some other chemical exposure, like just, again, toxins and toxicants. I mean, the products you use, I mean, I don't know if you'd say those are hidden because obviously you're using them, but still the ingredients you might not be aware of. So yeah, that's some detective work as far as, I mean, reading ingredients is important. And with molds, you might have to get a really good mold inspector. I mean, you could do your own testing also. But yeah, so there's EMFs, electromagnetic fields, which definitely are hidden, although you can use like an EMF detector. And I mean, EMFs don't affect everybody the same way, but I think they're still overlooked even after like 5G is everywhere now. And yeah, it's just something that could drag down our immune system and just at the very least unplug the Wi-Fi at night before going to bed. Again, you probably want to do more than that, but that at the very least do that. Minimize electronics in your bedroom where you're sleeping, blue light, minimize blue light exposure before going to bed. Poor oral health, another hidden trigger. So, mercury amalgams, root canals, gum infection, not even infections, but just gum disease like periodontitis could be an issue. I mean, I'm not a dentist, so I would say go to a biological dentist, visit the International Academy for Oral Medicine and Toxicology, which is IAOMT.org. And yeah, you could do a search for a biological dentist even if you're in a different country. So I mentioned stress, but stored trauma, like trauma from many years ago, we don't think that that could be a factor, but that could dysregulate our I'm sorry, our nervous system. And our nervous system controls everything in the body, including the immune system, including the thyroid. So stored trauma could play a role. Infections, I mentioned infections. Many times they are hidden because we might not feel bad, or maybe we feel bad and we just don't know. You feel fatigued and maybe you're thinking it's just adrenals, but maybe you have Lyme disease or Bartonella and maybe having some pain with that too. When I dealt with chronic Lyme disease as well as Bartonella, diagnosed in 2018, and my symptoms back then though were more neurological, but still it was hidden. Like it wasn't like I knew right off the bat that I had Lyme. And eventually when I suspected I might have Lyme, I didn't expect Bartonella to show up on the testing. So yeah, just sometimes it's challenging to find these because Lyme and Bartonella, you could have false negatives. Again, EMFs, like getting an EMF detector, oral health, seeing a biological dentist for toxins. You could do some testing, but you can't test for every single toxin and toxin out there. So, but that's in a nutshell, that's the saved thyroid method. And again, so you want to start with symptom management just so you're safe while going through the rest of the steps, the aligning adrenal and blood sugar, and then addressing, vanquishing any infections, healing the gut, which definitely need a healthy gut to have a healthy thyroid, eliminate reactive foods and toxins and toxicants, and definitely don't ignore the hidden triggers. And for even more information on the saved thyroid method, I have a free training called the Graves' Disease Survival Roadmap, which you can access in my free Healing Graves Naturally community, which is on a platform called School. And you could check this out and join by visiting savemythyroid.com/heal Graves disease. For now, it's free to join. Eventually, I'm pretty sure it will become a paid community. And while probably will be at a very low cost to join in the future, at this stage, you can be part of it at no cost, which means you could take advantage of the support, resources, and discussions. While again, it's still open and freely available. And part of the reason I think eventually it's going to be paid is just because I don't want it to get as large as my Facebook groups. I have two Facebook groups, one that focuses on hyperthyroidism and Graves. That's almost 25,000 people. And again, I kid around and I say how it's great for my ego. And again, I'm proud of building a community of that many people, but it's really hard to stay engaged and honestly becomes a little bit overwhelming. And I think even for the members, that could be the case too. So as of recording this, there's a little less than 400 people. And by the time this comes out, it probably will exceed that by the time this episode comes out. And again, once it reaches 1,000, I probably will make it a paid community, but we'll see. I just don't want it to get as large as the hyperthyroidism Graves disease Facebook groups. And So as far as when people join, some of the value, of course, one of the biggest values people are getting is hope beyond the standard three options that most endocrinologists talk about. So instead of just being told the only choices are medication, radioactive iodine, or thyroid surgery, we'll, of course, talk about root cause approaches to help you move forward so you could save your thyroid. Another benefit, of course, is guidance from someone who's been there. So I personally overcame Graves' disease, diagnosed in 2008, been in remission since 2009, and of course, it's created that SAVED Thyroid Method, which you could learn a lot more about by going through that training. Again, I gave an overview during this episode, but we'll go into greater detail. Graves Survival Roadmap training, and like I said, I have been more involved in this group. I've been more engaged into this group, and yeah, and then also evidence-based natural solutions. So recently, I released an episode not too long ago on L-Carnitine and selenium, which was based on an August 2025 study on how that could help lower the dose of methimazole for people taking the antithyroid meds and also even help with the antibodies. So yeah, I think if you've been following me for a while, you know that even though I give some things that have worked for me and on people I'm working with, also I do a lot of research as well, try to keep up with the latest research related to hyperthyroidism, Graves. And then, of course, again, you'll get access to the Graves Survival Roadmap, which is a step-by-step training. It has 8 modules that really goes into great detail into the SAVED Thyroid framework. And again, at the end of each module, there's an action step so you can actually implement what you learn. And as I said, a lot of people have gone through those action tasks, and I do my best to try to engage every time someone goes through the action tasks. And then also something I recently added so you also will get access to monthly hyperthyroid healing diet group Q&A calls with one of my nutritional health coaches. And again, this is once a month where one of my nutritional health coaches will answer your questions related to diet and lifestyle. And I'll also make an effort sometimes to appear. I can't promise I'll be on all the calls. It'll be hosted by one of my nutritional health coaches, and usually Helena Coliff is one of my health coaches, and she'll be the main one hosting it. And like I said, I'll be making appearances as well. Now, I do want to let you know when you join the community, there's different levels based on engagement. So everybody starts out level 1 to access the Graves Survival Roadmap training. Everybody could access it at level 1. So once you join, you get immediate access to this. But in order to participate in the monthly hyperthyroid healing diet group Q&A calls, you need level 2 access. But level 2 access is very easy to access. I mean, if you just have a little bit of engagement, and really, if you go through those action tasks through the training, the action tasks, you'll get to that really quickly. I mean, quite frankly, some people have gotten to it the same day, like within an hour or two. Just once they get in, they just dedicate to go through the training. So yeah, if there's a call, like if you happen to be joining this community and there's a call coming up shortly, you could take advantage of it and get to level 2 really quickly. So the goal is to encourage engagement. And so that's why I made that a requirement for the monthly calls, just so there's some engagement with that. But like I said, the training, you don't need to be level 2. You could just, as soon as you join, access to training. And again, to join the community, visit savemythyroid.com/heal Graves disease. And I'll also include the link in the show notes. And that is it. So hope you enjoyed this presentation, this episode talking about the SAVED Thyroid Method. But again, for even more information, if you want to go into this in greater detail, I highly recommend joining the community and going through the Graves' disease survivor roadmap training. And I think you'll find that to be highly beneficial. And then while you're in there, you can engage with others. You can take advantage of the monthly hyperthyroid healing diet group Q&A calls. Again, when I have challenges, the challenges will be taking place in this group as well. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this episode. And of course, I look forward to catching you in the next episode.